learn. Because it's a PDF, it's not built in the web page. But I'll see what I can do. That is actually a really good idea. A really good way to do it, I think.
Yeah, and then we could also, you know, the stars, those little starred elements could also be something that we could embellish, you know, explain exactly what we're talking about at that point in time, or maybe even give a hyperlink to one of our proposed letters, you know, or, you know, a little outline letter.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that would be something we should probably continue to work on.
Okay.
Because I think this is really
this is on track, but needs some more work.
Yeah, and this is such a very important part. We do have, I think Deb mentioned this early on in our month cycle here about videos at our land use summit, where staff was explaining a lot of this. Deb, do you remember that? I mean, this might be there might be a way to link those two, this, you know, graphic to a video that's more explanatory.
Yeah, I remember it. I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember the follow-up to that.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that there were a lot of good video segments in that land use summit.
Yeah.
And, you know, because this is so complex. And I think just looking at it, it is hard to grasp. You know, maybe an explanation or maybe a video could be a good way of communicating the nuances of this.
I put on my to-do list to round up the video links and then send that out to everyone to take a look at that.
Okay. Do you need help with that? Like to kind of sort through, or I mean, what do you think?
I'm sure. Yeah, if someone wants, I just was going to pull what we have, and I just don't remember how many segments, because not everything was recorded in full, was my recollection. Okay. So that's why I need to just go take a peek at what do we have. I know TVCTV shared everything with us that they compiled. Okay. But I know that they also did not record every single session.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say, I just have one comment about it. I like it, but what we used to use this kind of format for protocols and things like that. And what I think is that some people really like this kind of a flow chart outline, and some people like a regular outline. But with this one, you have to look in this lower left-hand corner to find out what the colors mean, if, for instance, and then you have to also try to figure out which one of these clear boxes is the line you're looking at. Does that make sense, Miles? And so yes. For the applicant initiating, you could almost take the color in a slant all the way up. I don't know, think about how people don't have to look at all these different side things to figure out, because your eye's drawn to this graph in the middle. And then you go back and try to figure out what the different colors mean and which line is referring to what.
Okay.
You know, and another thought would be for simplification is to have each application type on a separate page.
Oh, there you go, Terry.
And so maybe there could be more room for explanatory script, you know, underneath it, if that was all one page. I mean, this was separated into 3 pages, excuse me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think you've given me a lot to think about on how this could be improved. So why don't I work on it and come back at another time with an improved product that we can walk through?
Yeah, I love the content. I think it's just, as
Yeah.
Kenneth was saying, maybe kind of trying to look at making it less complex.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like Deborah mentioned, we're familiar with this. And so when I looked at it, I was like, oh, yeah, this is easy to follow. But the more I hear and the more I kind of examine it, it could be very confusing to somebody who isn't familiar with this type of stuff.
Yeah, and we do have that paragraph where we talk about the land use process, and maybe this is a place where we could slip that in too. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of, again, graphic plus words might be helpful. And I think Kenneth's point is well taken, that not every mind works like mine,
I wish
There
it
are
did.
people. That might be a good thing. Yeah. So this may appeal to the real logical progression of ideas. I'm more of a wordsmither. So, I think having something that appeals to both lines of reasoning is beneficial.
Just real quick, could I go through what I think I heard, just so I make sure I captured everybody's ideas? I heard, take this chart, break it into 3 pieces, add a narrative to each piece so that it's written out in words what the chart means for those type. If we have video that walks through each piece, to incorporate that either into the page or as an introduction to each diagram, and do something to kind of work on the key, so it's not so many things you have to look back and forth to understand what's happening in the chart.
Does everybody think that captures it?
Yeah,
Does for
Yep.
me.
Go.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Miles. That's great. I worked on the creating a script for those 2 slides, and I think I emailed everybody that. Did everybody get that? Like, I don't know, a week or so ago? Okay. Yeah, that's right. Here, you commented. Does anybody have any feedback on that? Did it make sense? Too complex, too simplified? Goldilocks, just right?
Terry, I thought it was maybe just a little too complex.
Okay.
I mean, even reading it myself, it looks pretty complex, and I have some understanding of it. So
Yes.
somebody that is not familiar at all, I might be above them a little bit. At least that was my thought on
Okay.
it. I think
So-
that's the whole problem we're having in all these is, we make it a little too complex, and the person that's reading it that knows nothing is going to have a hard time. But then we should always put in a staff member or somebody to call. I mean, I think Miles was talking about the staff would be willing to help people, not give them ideas on how to defend their position, but how they should do the letter writing and all that kind of stuff. So we should, give them a fallback at the end where they don't understand what's going on and just a number to.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. So kind of always say call the project planner.
We can say call the project planner, assuming they've received a notice for that.
I think the
And
most,
make sure, make sure it only, they understand it only applies to type 2 and type 3. Type 1, in most cases, you'd never ever know it's happening. There's no notification at all.
Yeah. You were gonna say something, Miles?
just, I think the most important piece, and the piece that I see kind of laymen struggle with, is understanding that they have to reference the development code. And especially be in front of planning commission
Uh-huh.
is, I'm just, whenever I hear people, not whenever, but often when I hear people talk about appealing a project, they want to go on, the neighborhood doesn't want it, which doesn't change anything. And then even referencing the comp plan at the planning commission level can't really change things either. A little bit different at city council, but to make that clear, because I don't know that contacting staff, planning staff, is going to help them understand that's really what they need to hone in on. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, I think that's, I think everybody would agree. That is how to communicate that.
So if you get nothing else
It's a
across,
complex concept and it's different for every application, but it's the key to effective comment and effective input. So does anybody have any ideas on how we could grapple with this complexity? I mean, I put it into words here, but you know, I could go on and on and on, you know, and I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Terry, I'm not so, please don't misconstrue my comment, but I think the point is, if you've got a project in your neighborhood and you don't like it or no one wants it, the way the laws have been set up and got you to the point where you are isn't probably what you're looking for. You're looking for some way to kind of get your comments in that hopefully are effective. So I'm not sure that that graphic, which I think is very good, about how the land use process that we have came to be and how everybody has to develop plans and ordinances that implement the plans, which is the thrust of that chart. I don't know that that's really a key piece for a reader to understand fully. I think as long as they know that's out there and that's how we got here, and here are the steps that are coming through the appeal, that's probably knowing enough. Beyond that, I think you can get yourself confused on land use stuff real easily.
Yeah.
As we all know. And I'm wondering if we're not trying to go to too much trouble to create something that we don't really need that badly. You know, are there other parts of this that are more important for an ACT leader to be looking at?
Yeah. Any other thoughts about that? I mean, maybe this is superfluous, not really needed.
Well, I wouldn't say it's not needed, but I don't. It's the amount of detail that we go to get it out there.
It is definitely land use 300 level coursework rather than land use 101. I think, well, let me just give you my motivation for finding this interesting, is that I think, you know, again, this is maybe not for the person who just wants to write a letter, a one-off kind of thing, but somebody who wants to really understand city decision-making, that, you know, Beaverton is part of this land use web. And really, we don't have the ability to really vary far, you know, the lane that we have been given in our land use decision making is fairly narrow. And the community does have some input in defining the lane and what it looks like. That was really my main, and I agree that it's a complex kind of topic, but I think, you know, when somebody says, I don't like it because it's not purple, you know, if there's no rules about, you know, the rule says it has to be purple, you know, you're just going to be frustrated. So
Yeah.
that was my intent, but maybe my execution is, or maybe that's, like I said, land use 300, and maybe we don't need that. I'm willing to bow to the will of the group.
Do we have something that explains what things are most successfully appealed and what things? I know when you look at it, it always refers you to the approval criteria. But when in talking with Janice, she was saying that most often very often what makes people the most unhappy aren't necessarily readily reflected in the approval criteria. And so that's, I don't know how we help people through that part, but.
Oh, yeah, like property value, that it'll impact my property value, that kind of stuff, you mean?
Yeah, something like that. And one example, you know, when we were talking earlier, one example she gave was the noise issues, that is a city code, not a development code. So complaints about noise ahead of a project completion are difficult. She said, you know, they're allowed to give you some help, but they can't direct you in developing an appeals, which for somebody who's never made an appeal out with this process before, they'd find off-putting or you know, kind of frustrating, really, that what they feel like they need, so then how do they get the help that they need if they're novice at this whole thing and don't understand the nomenclature and don't understand what their best shot at achieving what they the changes they'd like to see. Of course, not everybody can do, you know, not all complaints can stand up, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's
It's a tough one.
that's a tough one. Yeah, I imagine that it, you know, anecdotally, a planner could probably tell you what, you know, what type of action, land use action, is most successfully appealed, or, you know, and what is success, you know, that is it's kind of in the eye of the beholder. But I imagine there's probably no, well, that would be a tough one to analyze. I mean, are you thinking that, are you trying to find out which issue resonates most successfully with decision makers? Is that sort of what you're thinking?
Oh, me personally,
Well, I mean, to bring up that.
no, well,
thinking about,
maybe it's more of how do you translate your concerns into the language of the development code, and when you don't you're not familiar with that language.
well, I mean, I think that's why hopefully we're developing this website, and there will be some letters, some you know, comment letters that again deconstruct a comment letter that does a good job of communicating the issues.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, when the decision doesn't go your way, what do you do as a citizen or a resident of a community? I guess you go talk to your politicians, you know. But again, you know, I don't know. Any other thoughts on that tough one?
You know, we did for BCCI, Catherine Arnold and I did a very complex thing on appeals and what worked and what didn't work. This was before she was a city councilor and she was part of CCI back in about 2001 or something like that. And it's interesting looking at them, knowing what the sort of what you're looking for and seeing what they wrote. And, you know, and also an appeal letter, or I guess they have a form now, but it has to meet certain criteria just to get approved as an appeal. Just the fact that you write a letter saying I want to appeal it doesn't mean that it's going to be granted an appeal. But somebody makes the decision that is, you know, meets enough criteria for an appeal. But not everybody got that. I mean, some people just, you know, the letter didn't address any criteria, didn't do anything, just basically I don't like it. And those don't work for appeals. So,
But Jim, do you remember what exactly, what form this information took that you guys
I
developed?
don't know. I can look. It's, you know, I'll look back. I have almost all the stuff from CCI, assuming it was done electronically. I mean, you know, we're talking back a long time ago, and you know, I never erased anything from the folder for CCI, so I do have a lot of stuff. I took a quick look and I did not see it, and I don't know. I doubt if Kate still has it with all the stuff she gets for, you know, when she was city council. So.
Yeah,
But yeah, we did a lot of work on that, and it was really hard in those days because they had some of the development projects on an old computer type thing, and they were going to a new thing and all that. But yeah, we did a lot of work on that, and I'll see if I can find out. But basically, it just came down to if you don't, you know, if you aren't basing your appeal on a criteria that you feel planning commission has interpreted in the wrong way, you don't have much of a chance. But some things are political, like for Walmart. That, you know, I think that a lot was political. But city council is political. You know, if you have a really close decision in the planning commission, what I found is you have a lot better chance in city council, especially if there's a lot of political force on your side. You know. And then they can interpret criteria any way they want.
yeah. I wonder if that was for that land use forum. Remember our land use forum that we put on?
Yeah.
Is this
We-
the one that you and Sharon, you all always reference about Metro?
Yes, there was a session on Metro. Yeah. And I know Kate worked on that. That was with your predecessor.
Yeah, you know, I don't know how much of this old stuff was left. You know, everything now is pretty much videotaped and available, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure we videotaped that. Huh,
It's-
that would be a nugget if we could find it.
Well, I don't think I have that. So.
Yeah, I'm sure I don't either. Okay, so sample letter, we're already at 5:31, so we're probably gonna have our match and grant people show up shortly. So we have to kind of wrap this up. Kenneth, you were working on, I think something that might address some of the comments that we were just reviewing.
Thanks.
Sample comment letter. And I know Jim submitted one that was submitted on behalf of Greenway that I think
Yes,
had some very useful elements to it.
I'm wondering, is this it? I wonder if I can share it. I'm
Share what?
sorry. The example.
My example, no problem. These are all pretty much public information anyway, right? It was submitted, so.
This was just a template, not without content, followed by something. Yeah, and yours was very interesting and good.
Yeah, while Kenneth was looking for their materials, you know, Jim, I think your letter that you kind of passed along to us via email could be deconstructed nicely into, again, the outline form of, this is the issue, this is the approval criteria, this is what the neighborhood thinks, and this is what we think the decision maker should do with this information. And
I was wondering on that deconstruction, because I was looking at what Miles did with the notice you get, the first notice that comes in the mail, and he used little square things and pointed to that. And I mean, I don't know how to do that, but it looked like maybe a neat way to do to our letter too,
I think that's, everybody agrees. I think that's a great way to graphically illustrate the components of a good comment letter. And that's kind of what Connect's been working on too. Are you able to draw it up on the screen? I would have no idea how to do that, so I compliment you for even trying.
Is that? Nope, that's not it.
It's the development code.
Maybe I can, oh. This is it down here. Miles. I think it's configuring, so this might work, but
Did everybody get a copy of that, Connect? Did you send that to everybody?
no, I just sent it to you, Terry. I wasn't that confident.
Okay. I'm sorry. Should have shared.
Yeah.
Well, maybe this is, we're running out of time. I don't want to take
Yeah,
up the matching.
That's okay. I'll send it out to oh, there it is.
Yeah, why don't you send it out to everybody and we'll kind of have another convening of our little group.
Here it is. Oh, here it is. Can you see it?
Yay, that's it.
So it's just a template for how you might want to set up your letter. And then it starts with the header, starts with the purpose of letter and salutation type of a thing. The middle paragraph is where you talk about your pertinent approval codes, background of the issue, and that sort of thing. And this is what Terry's helping me with right now. And then a conclusion, an opinion or a request. And this is probably where you could enter those things that you think might mitigate your complaint, and then end with your title and name. And then if you keep going down, this isn't by page, but because we've been editing back and forth, but this shows the header. Here's an example of where we're at with Terry helping me with this. And what we decided with this is that, you could put in a link to the appropriate development code that you're referring to. We're going to change that from this flexible setback to a conditional use code for this particular example. But so when we've done that work, we can send that out to everybody.
I'm curious as to why you're making that change, because it's my understanding that flexible setback is one of those things that there's not any that it either meets it or it doesn't. Whereas conditional use, there's room for interpretation. And so I think, and I think that's where some people get into a little problem, is that they think that all things are like conditional use, where flexible setback is open to interpretation. So if I tell you the reasons why this shouldn't be approved, then the commission has the flexibility to change that. Whereas with flexible setback, if it meets the criteria, then they have to approve it. there's not any flexibility. So I think leaving it rather than conditional use where they have some discretion. I think that most of these kinds of issues, my experience anyway, has been, it's something that I don't like it, but if I'm trying to appeal it, if it meets the criteria, it has to be approved. And again, it's one of those things where I might not like it, but if it meets the criteria, and then you get into it doesn't meet the criteria, but there is flexibility in adjustment. So you can adjust it down a certain, to a certain point, and it will still meet the criteria and has to be approved. So that's where the flexibility comes in terms of the developer and meeting code. But if I'm expressing a reason why this shouldn't be approved, they still have that flexibility that I may not like. It gives them even more flexibility in meeting approval code.
That's a good point, Deborah. Terry, did you?
Yeah.
Well, this is the discussions we're having, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because I looked at, the flexible setback criteria, and, it doesn't fit in this scenario that was presented in this fake letter.
Right.
So,
right. But I think that's an example of, I don't, if I have an existing house and somebody wants to build a house next door to me, the whole flexible setback issue, it's like there's enough wiggle room in the code that they can build it way closer than I want that house built. So I can't just go to the development code and it says, there needs to be X amount of feet between the property line and the house. And whereas when my house was built, it was different, right? And so I might have 15 feet between my property line and the side of my house, but because of changes to the development code, they only have to meet, and then they can apply for an adjustment. And so it's only 5 feet, but actually in order to put this kind of house on this lot, we're gonna apply for an adjustment. So it only has to be 3.5 feet. So it's even closer to my house than I want it to be. And so I think those are the kinds of situations that people get upset about.
mm-hmm.
And so, finding something that is the common, and, and I'm one of those people that I drive through new housing developments, and it's like, you could reach out your window and and shake hands with your next door neighbor because they're that close together, and people don't want that. So, but it meets code, and so they don't have any recourse other than to sell their house and move to a house that's on a bigger lot.
It was interesting because the planner thought that this letter would work because of kind of what you said, that you were contesting the application of the code in this circumstance. But at the same time, Terry, we kind of thought that the other side of the coin is that it is a very specific example involving very specific parameters, parking parameters. And so maybe we keep it as an example. I don't know, Terry, what do you think?
Well, we're already digging in.
We were already past it.
Yeah,
but
I think this is a really critical, because this is going to be kind of the letter that Lanny said initially, what NACs want are letters that they could use when there's development in their area. So we just need to be sure that it meets a general the general need for NACs as a usable letter. And I think it has some, it still needs some work. So
it still needs work.
What you've done is really great. And
I'm in a meeting.
Yeah, we brought it to you knowing that it still needed work. So
going to have a break at
next time.
Okay, so we'll meet again, Land Use Subcommittee. Sorry, I thought this was going to be it, but we'll meet again. And we'll talk about it tonight at our regular meeting. And meanwhile, we'll let our matching grant folks take over. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
night.
everyone. I'm gonna stop the recording.